Welcome back to Crypto Corner right here on Schwab Network. I'm Jenny Horne. Tokenization is fast and furious right now, and the Lone Star State takes a big step in creating its Bitcoin reserve. So now let's bring in our very own Texas native contributor, Nate Peterson, Director of Derivatives Analysis at the Schwab Center for Financial Research. Nate, before we get some crypto charts, of course, because those have been definitely on our radar as of late, let's stay in Austin, Texas, of course. Tell us what's going on in the state as far as the Bitcoin's reserve.
Yeah, no doubt, Jenny. Yeah, proud Austin here. Yeah, first state, Texas, to commit public funds to their strategic Bitcoin reserve. So, the difference is if you look at many of the announcements we've had around strategic Bitcoin reserves, such as the U.S. federal government, they just reclassified Bitcoin that they already owned. So the difference here is that Texas is actually taking public money and actually investing in Bitcoin. $10 million initially, which isn't a huge sum, but I think it's more perhaps symbolic of the acceptance or the adoption of cryptocurrency, of Bitcoin. And, net, it's a bullish move for the crypto advocates here. There were some critics that thought that the amount was, kind of low, and then B, there was not any language. For example, they were considering taking some of their revenue streams, like receiving, vehicle registration fees, for example, accepting those payments in Bitcoin and then transferring that Bitcoin over to this strategic reserve. That was not included in the bill here, but there's several, 28 other states right now are considering having this strategic reserve. And so this is just another incremental step in that direction where it looks like these state governments are hoping to have some diversification on their balance sheet here. And that's really what it symbolizes. Now, look, Bitcoin is trading near all-time highs. This looks great. What I mean is, as we have this new Trump administration that comes in that's crypto-friendly, as they announce their strategic reserve, the states follow suit. We've got Texas that is now committing public funds, and so these are all incremental bullish steps. But if we do go through some Bitcoin volatility, which we have seen historically, let's see if this narrative changes. So if we were to have some kind of, a drawdown in Bitcoin. So back in 2022, for example, we had a significant drawdown in the price of Bitcoin. If that were to occur, do the states then look at that as an opportunity to get Bitcoin at a lower price? Or will they then perceive that volatility and be turned off to having that as a consideration on their balance sheet? So that's really going to be up for debate. And so what I mean is, I'm not quite sure if these bullish, green shoots within these strategic reserves that we've seen can yet, have they been battle tested? And I think that really will come when because we eventually will get a bear market in stocks. If that occurs, and if Bitcoin pulls back, let's see, how the sentiment is around Bitcoin and adding it to their balance sheet.
Yeah, and so as promised, we will get to now the charts. You've got a few technical points to highlight here. It helps markets are at all-time highs, but Bitcoin's chart as it stands right now has been more consistent and more reliable as far as its recent uptrend.
Yeah, no doubt. So uptrend is still intact. We're basically $2,500-ish dollars away from the all-time high. We've got roughly maybe some support there around the 50-day SMA. That's the aqua line in the chart there. Look, the way that I view the price action here in Bitcoin, number one, it's buoyant over the last 6 weeks or so, as you can see. That's good. So maybe we had this strong run from the beginning of April. That's where we ran down to the 200 SMA, the yellow line in the chart. We then rallied up to fresh all-time highs. Perhaps the action over the past 5 weeks or so is some consolidation, digest such a mighty run from roughly 80K to 110K, 30K move there. The other thought that I have, though, is as well is that there's been just a slew of announcements of around corporations that are signing these into law, basically, to be able to purchase Ethereum or Bitcoin as part of their operations. And we've also seen this, like with Texas, these other announcements where there's these Bitcoin purchases. We know about Strategy and we know some of the other big names, but there's so many other small players that have been announcing these Bitcoin purchases as part of a strategic diversification avenue, so to speak. And one would think, though, with all these announcements, with all these net purchases, with taking more supply off of the market, why isn't Bitcoin following suit? So what I guess I'm getting to here is that we expect regulation, more Bitcoin purchase, strategic reserve, etc., all of this to be conducive. One would think, just from a strict supply-demand dynamic, that that would be bullish for higher Bitcoin prices, but we'd like to see that in the chart. We'd like to see that break above that 112K. Now, if the U.S. government were to do a similar move and actually take public funds to buy Bitcoin, at some point they might do this. That could be bullish for Bitcoin prices. Right now, it appears we're still in consolidation. We'll call it from roughly 103K to 110K, just kind of churning and working through some of the recent gains we had over the past couple of months. But what we'd like to see now is a breakout to new, fresh highs.
And last but not least, now we are talking tokens. You're following a story about tokenizing private companies. Tell us more about what these tokens are and really what this may mean for investors, as well as, the overall implications for the crypto world.
Absolutely. Yeah. So look, this is all the rave, Web 3.0. This is the year of, a lot of this has to do with the administration that's in the White House. But if you look at Web 3.0, which is basically blockchain, DeFi, tokenization, stable coins, you can think of as tokenizing dollars, so to speak. What does that mean? Putting them on chain, making them digital, so to speak. So recently, there's a private investment firm out of New York, Republic, that announced that they're going to be tokenizing private security, specifically SpaceX, and they're looking to tokenize even more additional companies that, Anthropic, some of these AI companies that, investors, regular retail investors do not have access to right now. You have to be an accredited investor to access the private markets there and purchase those shares. If not, you have to wait for an initial public offering when you get to the public markets, and then you can participate. So I think that what's interesting about this is that the tokenization that Republic is offering here, it's not actually ownership of SpaceX. We'll use SpaceX for an example. It is meant to mimic the performance of SpaceX that is right now trading in the secondary market on the private secondary market for accredited investors. So Republic is utilizing the blockchain, utilizing tokenization, and saying, look, to the public, if you'd like to purchase these tokens, they're going to mimic the performance of the secondary market of SpaceX private shares. Right now, you can invest from 50 to 5,000. Eventually, they will trade on a secondary market. That's where Republic is going to be getting their fees. If SpaceX were to come public at some time, then whatever the share price is, you would have the potential to enjoy that appreciation, assuming that when they go IPO, that there would be that kind of favorable reception. But Jenny, this is interesting because this is really about tokenization and 3.0. So we're talking about tokenizing private companies. So as a retail investor, you can get access to private companies that before you did not have access to. Again, it's not ownership, so you're getting kind of a product that mimics the performance of it. But keep in mind that you can essentially tokenize anything that we deem valuable. And in terms of the regulation and where that stands, so right now, if you want to go buy SpaceX and you're not an accredited investor, you can't do so. But Republic is saying you can get these tokens, which are not technically private shares, and they will mimic the performance. And I think that the SEC is, perhaps still, they're open to the advancement of Web 3.0, and the regulation and the moves and the announcements that they made support that. And so I can only imagine, though, that we're going to see more and more of these announcements. Jenny, we were just talking about, Walmart and Amazon getting their stable coins. All of this is putting everything on chain. And it's going to be interesting because it's moving so quickly to see, A, if there is a response for the government, if they want to put a pause on the advancement of these types of products that are making their way into the retail investors' hands. And then the second part of this, and I think about this when I look at, the price action of Bitcoin, is as we advance regulation and these product offerings to the public, we have to keep in mind that this represents more supply of Web 3.0 to the public. And does that take away any demand from Bitcoin? That's kind of a question I have. Look, the technicals on Bitcoin are great. The uptrend's still intact. We know that there's the institutions that are getting involved in terms of wanting to put Bitcoin into their offerings and having their products, their ETFs that come out. We know that there's corporations that are adding it to their balance sheet. We know that retail investors at some point might want to add Bitcoin to their portfolios. But the more supply of Web 3.0 type products, meaning I can get exposure to this new technology via other avenues other than just buying Bitcoin, my question is, at some point, do we see some of the demand that would have gone to Bitcoin go towards some of these other products? That's still a question that has not been answered, so only time will tell.
That is true. And it does feel like right now there's going to be so many different ways once and finally, I think, celebrated, but so many different ways to invest in this space where for so long it was like Bitcoin and various Bitcoin entities were somewhat of our only vehicle, but that's no longer the case. I think the latest craze of tokenization is going to be a fun one to follow and already so interesting. Just every single week we have so many great things to talk about regarding the overall crypto space. So we so appreciate it, Nate Peterson, for all of that insight. But that's it for us today. Be sure to get every Crypto Corner episode by subscribing to Schwab Network's YouTube channel. I'm Jenny Horne, and we'll see you next week.